All right, guys, welcome to the show. Continuing on with these amazing beat writers. And today we've got Tori, and I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I've butchered you're like the ninth beat writer I've had on. I've butchered like every last name. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. By the way, she covers Atlanta Falcons. So, Tori, who are you and what do you do?
Yes, I'm Tori McElhaney. That's how you pronounce my last name. I cover the Falcons. I'm their in-house beat reporter and have been for almost a year now.
That's amazing. So how does one, again, this is awesome because I'm talking to people that do what they love. How does one become a beat writer? Because I want that job. Not really the Falcons particularly. I love fantasy, but if I'm listening to this, I'm like, damn, I want her job. Like, I'm not telling, don't teach people how to steal your job, but how does one become a beat writer?
Yeah, so I got my start. I went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and I
Nice.
started out as at the student newspaper, and that's kind of where I got my first beat experience at the red and black on campus, and I just kind of went from there. I said yes to almost every single opportunity and really just decided that I wanted to be a sports reporter. It was always something that I had a passion for. My dad was my high school's football coach for the first 17 years of my life. So I was always around the sport and I didn't necessarily know what my life looked like without it. And I knew I could write. And so it just kind of all fell into place in college. And then afterwards, I got a job with MLB.com covering the Atlanta Braves for a little bit. And then after that, The Athletic hired me for 3 months initially. And then I worked my way up before covering the Falcons in 2020 with them. And then the Atlanta Falcons liked what I did with the Athletic and decided to hire me to come and work for them. So that's kind of my trajectory in a 2-minute synopsis.
Yeah, I love having you guys on and girls in this case and women because it's just amazing because you guys have that inside information. Now, I'm very intuitive. So I just had the Broncos guy on, Troy, and he's awesome. And basically, I was very intuitive. I kind of gave him like a quick synopsis of like how I feel about a team, but to have their expertise and get that feedback from you guys kind of either solidifies what I'm saying or maybe makes me think other things in regards to fantasy. Now, do you play fantasy football at all? Are you allowed to as a team ambassador?
I am not allowed to. I used to back in the day when I was in college, but I haven't since I've been in the league, since I've been covering the league, I don't play anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't, even like current players can't, or because it's, there's that aspect of the bets
Oh
and all
yeah.
that stuff. But I know that baseball players, they DM me all the time. I can't say who, but even basketball players are DMing me all the time asking like, who do I start, this and that. It's pretty remarkable how, how many people are into fantasy sports and they kind of do other sports because they can't kind of do their own sport. It's awesome.
Mhm. Yeah, I wish I had more time on my hands to be able to play more fantasy, but when you're around it 24/7, it almost kind of takes the fun out of it because you are just so ingrained in the season that it's like the last thing I want to do when I go home after a 12-hour day is sit and play fantasy and like rearrange rearrange everything, like my rosters, all of it. I was like, I need to just like sit and read a book or something.
Exactly, something different. And that's the thing. When I was doing fantasy my whole life, I was so much like played fantasy before I started doing it for a living. It was like something like Christmas. It came around like once a year. You had your draft.
Yes.
Now it's like it's every day for me. And I'm not saying I hate it, but I'm just like it doesn't give you that same type of high that it did when I played it once a year and I drafted once a year. But I still
Mhm.
love it, and I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't love it. So that's very important. That I'm glad that you found something that you love to do because so many people are running around like, what do I do with my life? And I try to inspire people in my story. Take action, build your side hustle, do something that you love because you live once. And I hated doing what I was a sales rep. I sold hydraulic cylinders. I hated it. And then I found this. Now I'm fully independent. It's great.
Yeah, I think I tell people all the time, it's like, say yes within reason, because something that I didn't do as a young reporter is I didn't take time for myself. And that was one of the reasons that I made the jump to the team side is because I needed better work-life balance. I needed to work with a team. And that was something that as a 25, 26-year-old, I value more than I did at 22. And I think I always try and tell people like, going back to what you were saying, like you only live once, like you only get to be in some of your friends' weddings one time, and you
Right.
only get to hang out with your family and their new puppy like for a month time period. And so
Right.
I very much have tried in the last year to really walk the walk and talk the talk about having work-life balance and not having the job completely be my entire life.
Right. And then hopefully this inspires people. That's another goal of mine, is try to do the philanthropy aspect, entrepreneurship, and help people find their passion. So,
Mhm.
um, anyway, so aside from that personal stuff, I really want to deep dive into the fantasy aspect. Let's see what you're made of. Let's see what you got there. Now I'm testing all my beat writers, and the wealth of knowledge is phenomenal. Let's start off with the offense here. Obviously, Matt Ryan. Not sure what happened there. I mean, like, I think he's a great quarterback. Had he lost his, I mean, it's Colts now we're talking here, but had Matt Ryan kind of lost that passion there? They looked deflated last year. And is Marcus Mariota, who was backup, last year, is he going to step back into that role, or is Desmond Ridder going to take that role? So maybe start off with the quarterback situation, how it was last year and the improvements going into this year. And look at Marcus Mariota again, from a fantasy perspective. I'm not really excited. I mean, I speak the truth, right? Like, he hasn't really wowed us, like, as of late anyway. What happens at the quarterback this year? Should we be excited at all?
Yeah, this is going to be a very important topic, not just this year, but as we move into the post Matt Ryan era that's going to span the next few years. And to answer your first question, like, essentially, has Matt Ryan lost it? No, no, Matt Ryan has not lost anything. Matt Ryan is still as good as he's been in recent. I mean, I've seen no drop off in what Matt Ryan does and did.
Right.
The reason why there needed to be a change with Matt Ryan in Atlanta was, one, his cap hit was so significant, and in order for the Falcons to get more money towards the cap quicker, there had to be a parting. And I also think that if you're Matt Ryan, you are looking at the twilight years of your career, and
Right.
you want to go to a team that's going to
Strong.
win. Yeah, like, you're going to want to go to a team right now that's going to be in playoff contention. Not saying that the Falcons are not, but I am saying that the Colts are in a much better position. So I think if you're Matt Ryan, you also don't want to essentially stick around and get beat up on the way you were last year. So with Matt Ryan, I don't think it was a mutual decision for both the Falcons organization and Matt Ryan. And so then moving forward, the Falcons signed Marcus Mariota on a 2-year deal. Marcus Mariota is someone who has experience with Arthur Smith and in his scheme. They both were together at Tennessee. So you have somebody who Arthur Smith trusts and who he respects. And something I will say about Marcus Mariota is we haven't seen him in that starting role in a very, very long time. And trying to figure out, honestly, how Marcus Mariota fits not only in this offense, but the league at large. Marcus Mariota is a guy who wants to prove that he is still a starting quarterback caliber in the league. So having him have a chance to prove that here with the Falcons is kind of essentially where you are. And then in terms of Desmond Ridder, I think people maybe need to pump the brakes a little bit. This is still a young guy, and
Right.
it wasn't like he was the number 8 pick. He was number 74. He is, I think, going to be good in that backup role, and we'll see. Maybe I really do think his football IQ is there right now. Arthur Smith has paid that compliment to Desmond Ridder that he feels good with where he's at in terms of the install of the scheme and his command of the huddle. So there's a good, healthy competition in Atlanta right now in terms of what happens in this post Matt Ryan era of Atlanta.
Yeah, I was just talking to Troy, the beat writer for the Broncos. We were just talking about lackluster quarterbacks that can just not get it done. Like Ryan Tannehill is a perfect example. Sam Darnold, maybe, guys that like kind of get you to a certain point and just don't get you to the finish. And again, just based on what I've seen, looking at your quarterback situation, it doesn't excite me as guys that can get you there. Do you see Desmond Ridder, and again, that's my opinion. Do you see Desmond Ridder being that franchise guy? Do you think he's got that kind of, energy around him that he could be like this is an extreme example, but like maybe a Pat Mahomes? Does he have like a franchise written over him, or do you think he'll just be like a safe backup and that's kind of where he'll stay?
I think that's still to be decided. I feel like we need to see more of Desmond Ritter's command in a game. As of right now, he's only been in Atlanta for what, 2 months? So we
Yeah.
have a lot of time between now and getting through training camp to really see how he comes along in his rookie year. I also am not completely sold on either of these guys being the long-term answer. I think there are so many options on the table for the Falcons to make decisions about who they want to have long term. You know, Matt Ryan was here for over a decade. Sometimes you don't get that with a quarterback. And so they're looking for that next step. And right now it almost feels I almost feel like there are a lot of different things. Marcus Mariota is only here on a 2-year deal. Desmond Ridder, honestly, because he wasn't a number 8 pick, but a 74 pick, he could be a package for somebody. If you're talking about trades in 2023, could you package Desmond Ridder and send him somewhere and get something in return, like say a pass rusher? The Falcons
Yeah.
need help in that regard as well. So I'm not sold on either of these guys being the future of this position group. But I also think it could happen. Could Marcus Mariota have a turn in his career? Absolutely. Could Desmond Ridder morph into the guy that you think you want long term? Absolutely. Right now, there's just so many different options that this position can go in. It's why we're going to be talking about the quarterback battle for not just this season, but for years to come in Atlanta.
Yeah, so many suspect situations. Davis Mills in Houston. How do you trust that? Tua's in question mark. Have we seen him? Zach Wilson. He's got a lot to prove this year. Mitch Trubisky. I'm not sure if he's the real deal. Drew Lock in Seattle. Trey Lance. Like, there's so many question marks with so many teams. Like, there isn't any. Like, there's only like a handful of teams that have really good quarterbacks, and after that, it's like question marks up in the air. So that's kind of one thing when I look at your offense. I'm kind of just like questioning it. But again, Mariota could be the guy, and then this other guy, like you said, Desmond. I mean, he may have a chip on his shoulder and say, "Hey, man, I wasn't drafted early rounds. I'm going to pull a Tom Brady here or something like that." Who knows?
Of
Anything's
course.
possible.
Yeah. Anything's possible at this point. And also, like, we've seen so many blockbuster trades in the offseason with quarterbacks more in the last 5 years than probably the 15 years before that combined. So everything and anything's kind of on the table right now.
All right, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. This is where it gets exciting. We're talking like impact here. So especially running back. So there's a guy that's really catching my attention, but I need to ask you specifically. And again, I'm pretty intuitive. I think Tyler Allgeier excites me for fantasy. I think he could and maybe should be the workhorse. Patterson, years to wow us. We weren't wowed when he came in as a rookie, as a wide receiver. Then he came on to last year, really showed up, and I was really impressed. I think Patterson's a really good player. He, again, like I said, I have this saying, it's called years to wow me, I'm not wowed. He's one of the guys that broke that. He's like, years to wow us, we weren't wowed, and he finally excited us last year. How does this play out here? I think you still have Damian Williams. I mean, he's not, doesn't excite me. And Kadri also, I hope, again, I'm butchering names here. But Tyler Allgeier seems like a guy that's a plug and play, could be a workhorse running back. Does he have that caliber? And how does this committee work out? Does Patterson start off as a running back? Is he going to be more in the receiving game? Or do you see Allgeier being the guy?
When it comes to the use of Cordero Patterson, he's always going to be a hybrid type weapon for Arthur Smith in this offense. He's going to get carries and he's also going to get catches. And that's just how it's going to be, because we saw that happen last year and we saw him be productive in this system in a way that we haven't seen Cordero Patterson be in any of the years that he's been in the league. I always joke, I was like, Arthur Smith and his offensive staff kind of broke the Cordero code last year. And
Yeah.
that was what we saw. And honestly, Cordero Patterson was great for fantasy football guys like that.
Yeah.
He was. But now it's all about, he signed to come back to Atlanta, which was it was a big deal for this organization to get him back because he was, one, so productive and he is a fan favorite here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So the where you want to get to now is you understand and know that Cordero Patterson has been in the league a very long time and he's not going to be able to be your quote unquote workhorse. So making sure that guys around him are building up their reps as well. And I'm glad that you brought up Tyler Allgeier. He's someone that the Falcons went out and drafted. And I think that he is one of those tough runners that will be able to get you those tough, dirty carries that they're going to need, that you maybe necessarily don't want Cordell Patterson to have, on third down when you just need 2 yards. Like send Tyler Allgeier out there and have him get those 2 yards. And so I think that's kind of the scope of where they're at. And you also have Damian Williams. I think he was a really good pickup this offseason. And then Avery Williams, who was a DB last year, but mainly he's a punt and kickoff specialist. He has officially moved to running back. Will he be able to lighten Cordell Patterson's load? I think that they have a good group right now, and and because we're just getting through minicamp, we'll know more about that running back rotation and what it's really going to look like when we get into training camp.
So you're not really, so does he have the potential, do you think, to be a workhorse? Could this be exciting? Like, what do you, again, it's hard to predict, but stat line, do you see 200 attempts out of Allgeier? Or do you think it's going to be more of a committee approach based on the mindset of the coaching?
I think it'll be a committee approach. I do, because I think when you look at the way that Arthur Smith kind of concocts his offense, it's very, especially here recently, he likes playing around with personnel. And so I think you're going to see a lot of versatility in both kind of the usage of Cordell Patterson, of Tyler Allgeier, and making sure that they are kind of movable pieces, not necessarily like this is our workhorse and we're going to give him X number of carries. Really and truly looking at the defense that they're going against and understanding the scheme of which they're trying to attack. I think that is where Arthur Smith, as a play caller, likes to stay in that lane, where it's not like, oh, like this is our starting running back and we're going to give him X number of carries. It's like, what does the game allow us to do? And who best fits this game plan?
Either way, they're both great value in fantasy. I'm just going to probably stash Allgeier and hope for the best. If he breaks out, then bonus. That's how I'm approaching this. Okay, that's good insight. In regards to the wide receiver, first of all, again, I haven't really been up to tune on this. What happened? Is Calvin Ridley, is he still like attached to the team at all? Like any update on him?
Yeah, so Calvin Ridley is suspended for the 2022 season, and he essentially, the way that it works is his cap hit has been taken off of the Falcons in terms of the money owed to Calvin Ridley while he's suspended. Right. When he is no longer suspended, that'll be a different conversation altogether, and the Falcons will get to decide what they want to do with him. And so that's kind of just where they are right now. He is not able to play this year.
Right. I know he had some mental health issues you wanted to address stuff. Do you know anything about that? Is that personal? Has he himself? Do you know if he's in care? Has he been taking care of his mental state? Do you know anything about that at all?
Everything that I know is essentially what all of you know, that Calvin Ridley made a statement that he was going to work on himself and his mental health and he was putting himself first, and he needed to do things outside of football. And that's all I know.
Hope that works out, because he's very talented, obviously.
Yes, very much so. I love watching Calvin Ridley. I think the art of which he always says like running routes is an art, not a science. And I love that. I love watching him play.
All right. So I'm excited to keep it on the wide receiver thing. So like for fantasy, I have something called Fantasy Football Pass. I'm not the friendliest guy to players and teams. I have players DMing me wanting to fight me. I've had it out with a bunch of players, because I call it how it is. If they have a bad game, I say you suck. Like I just say you have a bad game. But there was a guy last year or the years before, I think I don't know who I owned, whether it be Ridley or someone. He came in and hoarded away some touchdowns. And it was, I call him the zucchini. It's Zacchaeus. How do you pronounce it? Zacchaeus?
Alameda Zacchaeus.
I call him like, who's Zucchini? Because I'd never heard of him. And then he gets a touchdown away from my Ridley or whatever. So we're very shallow, mean people in the fantasy. We just want our guys to be putting up fantasy points. But who, like Drake London, excites me. Is he going to be the guy there? Like he's the guy that's going to be the one, right? I would guess.
You would think so. I mean, I think something that I say all the time is, before we got to the draft, you were looking at this wide receiver room and for the Falcons, and you're like, it is barren. And you're like, and how are they going to bring guys in and build it the way they want to? Because for the first time in what feels like over a decade, the Falcons didn't have a true number one receiver. You think back to even like the Roddy White days, the Julio Jones days, like even having Calvin in the first few games of last season. So it really did feel like we were entering into a different type of Falcons team. And then they go out with the number 8 pick and take Drake London to show that, like, hey, look, like I imagine that you take a top 10 pick, you want him to be the guy. And again, it goes back though to Arthur Smith's packages and player personnel, because Kyle Pitts, even though he's a tight end, is going to get a lot of receiving yards. He's going to get a lot of targets. So you're looking at guys like Drake London, you're looking at guys like Kyle Pitts, you're looking at Cordero Patterson, who's going to play a role in the pass game. And you're on the depth chart. This is a wide receiver, a tight end, and a running back, technically. Yeah. So I tend to say, like, when you're talking about this Falcons offense, you need to kind of have a broader scope of your receivers that you're working with, because it's not just these wide receivers. There's a lot more working at play here than just them.
How is Drake? Like, again, I'm looking at Drake London. I'm looking at the tape. He looks so confident. Like, he looks like he's having fun out there. How good do you think he is? Are we talking like top 5? Like, are we talking like a Jamar Chase conversation when we're talking talent potential here? And how is that connection going with him and Marcus right now? Are they looking good together? Do you see anything with them? Like, this is going to be special?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's the pairing with Kyle Pitts that I think is very special. You have two guys who are over 6'4" out there on the field at the same time that are both very significant weapons in what you're doing offensively. I do think that we were talking to Marcus and Desmond about the sheer height of some of the receivers that they have right now. You think of Kyle and you think of Drake, you think of Auden Tate, who's like 6'5", and Geronimo Allison. Like, some of these guys it was very obvious that Arthur Smith had a plan this offseason. He wanted to bring in some big body receivers, and he did. Terry Fontenot and his staff went out and got those guys. Drake London is one of those guys. I think the expectation for Drake London is kind of what you thought the expectation for Kyle Pitts was last year, in that he's going to be somebody who's going to get a lot of yards. And that's something that you want. I think something that you want to see the Falcons get in the end zone more and have those opportunities for those 50-50 balls in the end zone. So it all goes back to what Arthur Smith wants Drake London to be, which I think is going to be a pretty significant role player in this offense.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective for you, we have rankings. It's called consensus rankings for fantasy. And basically, like, wide receiver ones like Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, Deebo Samuel, like, those are your top 4, Devontae Adams. And what happens with fantasies, they take last year's top finishes and put them on top in that order, predicated on last year's finish. So there's not really thinking. So where I stray away is I kind of find these hidden gems. Right now, to put this in perspective for you, Drake London, and this is crazy. And I just think this is why I think what a steal. He's 39. He's ranked 39th amongst wide receivers right now in standard leagues. Now in PPR, it's going to vary a little bit, but just even having him, he's 39th. Yes, about the same. 39th. So I just think that this guy could have a huge ceiling and upside. Great value, great talent. I think this is one of those gems this year that people are like, wow, this guy's a good receiver. Again, that's my intuition. Do you think I'm crazy to think that he's going to be phenomenal or no?
No, I think that's the hope of the building in Flowery Branch. I think everybody within the Falcons organization wants Drake London to go out and have 100-yard games all the time. Now, how realistic is that? That's the question. And I think we're still a good ways away, but I don't think that it's out of the question to think that week in and week out, Drake London is going to have anywhere from 60 to 100 yards in a game. I just think that's how the nature of this year is going to go for him. So how he progresses in his rookie year is going to be very, very important. But I do think that he's going to have his catches. He's going to have his yards, because he is such a vital part of, one, this offense right now, but also the offense in the future.
My prediction, I would like to get us, just for fun, we won't hold you to a stat line. Here's my prediction. I'm guessing 1,200 yards. This is a floor. 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, and around, 130 to 40 receptions. Okay. It's kind of that. Do you think I'm right? Where do you feel like, can you guess at this?
I mean, I know. I mean, I think that sounds great. I think honestly, when I look at it, which is probably not like the way that I think a lot of fantasy football players look at it, but I just need the Falcons offense to get in the end zone more. So
Yes.
that number of touchdowns sounds fantastic. If you can get the ball in Drake London's hands that many times in the end zone, because that's something that if we're talking about Kyle Pitts was in the end zone one time in London last year. He does not have a touchdown reception on U.S. soil. That is something that has to change for the Falcons in order for them to be successful. Drake London plays a huge part in that. So if he goes out and has that many touchdowns, fantastic.
I'm excited. So if you were to predict who gets more, if you have a scale here, who ends up with more volume, more touchdowns, is it Pitts or is it Drake London? If you had to choose, I'm putting you on the spot. If you had to choose, us fantasy guys want to know this answer. If you had to choose, who has more points?
Kyle. I think it could be Kyle. Yeah, I do, because I think you look at Kyle Pitts, and I think it was one of those things that when they drafted Kyle Pitts with the number 4 overall pick last year, they talked a lot about how much of an asset he would be in the red zone, particularly. But then you go through the 2021 season and he comes away with 1 touchdown. And it's like they really want to get that number up. And I think that because of that and because of Kyle Pitts' experience, I just believe that that could happen. I do.
Wow. Are you getting? I'm gonna go against you here, friendly bet here. I'm gonna say Drake London surpasses him, but again, I think it might be close. But are you getting that vibe off him, that Kelsey kind of vibe? Like he could be utilized a lot more. Is he could be doing a lot more blocking this year?
I mean, I think the year that Kyle Pitts had in his rookie year, I think you would try and mimic that as much as you possibly can. And I don't necessarily think that that means making him more of a blocker. I think it means honestly doing what you did last year, making sure that he's super involved in the pass game. I think Kyle Pitts is somebody who's going to get his yards. He's going to get his targets and carries because he is super important to the overall scope of this offense.
I'm excited. It's just that the thing is, here's why I'm a little turned off. Pitts for fantasy, he's ranked 3rd amongst tight ends on the consensus ranking. So I'm just like, I don't know if I want to pay the early draft pick for him. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm rooting for Drake to crush it. A couple last questions here real quick. Division wise, where do you see them finishing in the division? Honest, non-biased prediction, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I think when you look at what Tampa Bay is returning and kind of the scope of what the Saints still have in their facility, I think those are the two teams that you're chasing.
Yeah.
If you're the Falcons and the Panthers, you're trying to get to the point where you are actively competitive against those two teams mainly. So I do think that you look at the Saints and Tampa Bay and you put them at the top. And I don't know if you necessarily put the Panthers or Atlanta above them.
This is where a bird actually takes out a cat. For one. So I'm just like, Brady's going to be tough to beat. Like, I think he gets another Super Bowl before he retires. I think that's why he came back. You guys are going to have it in tough for a couple of years with him. But if you figure out that quarterback situation, you'll be a force to be reckoned with. And defensively, you guys are confident this year?
There's a lot that needs to be done defensively. The Falcons had one of the worst pass rushes in the league in 2021. That has to change in order for this entire team to be successful. And in order to do so, they are actively trying to change that. They go and they re-sign Grady Jarrett, which was an important move for this offseason. And then they go and get not 1, but 2 edge rushers in the draft. Granted, they're young. And Ade Ogundeji, who's another guy who they drafted in the 5th round last year, is young. And then you have Lorenzo Carter. This is going to be a tough year for pass rush again. But I go back to having the money and the opportunities to go out and get perhaps an experienced pass rusher in 2023 as being kind of the play here. It's almost like this defense, just get this defense to 2023 and then you can go play around with it. But I will say that I think this secondary is going to be pretty good. I think AJ Terrell paired with Casey Hayward is going to be a very, very good pairing in this secondary at cornerback for the Falcons this year. So I'm excited to see that particularly.
Even for you, who's like, feet on the street, you got your ear and everything. It's just such a new, different offense. No Matt Ryan, new weapons coming in. How is it all going to gel? It's going to be exciting to see how it all unfolds. So I guess that's what makes football fun, is that uncertainty, that excitement of how it's all going to gel.
Mhm.
Last question I've asked every beat writer at the end. Is there any type of inside information at all that maybe we don't know? Maybe like, does Mariota carry a lucky charm with them or something like that? Is there anything camaraderie? Is there anything going on that behind the scene that we might not notice? Kyle Pitts hanging out with Marcus. They hang out after, they talk game plan. Is there anything, any type of inside information you could share that we might not know about the team?
Yeah, so this actually is something that happened recently in mini camp. The second I was talking about the secondary, and Kyle Pitts is somebody who they love to get on him all the time. They're always kind of trash talking him, being like, "Don't let 8 get in the end zone. Like
Yeah,
let's keep 8's hands off the ball." And so it's funny because we were talking to Casey Hayward, and he said that before the last practice, AJ Terrell and Kyle Pitts were just kind of like going at it, kind of trash talking each other, all in good fun, of course.
yeah,
And it was funny because I think you saw a play where Kyle got a quote unquote touchdown. If you're playing a real game, not 7-on-7, but like
yeah.
he caught a touchdown pass. It was a pretty good catch for Kyle, and he launched the ball up in the air and was just kind of like right in the face of the DBs that were giving him so much crap earlier in the day. And it's stuff like that. And I honestly, it's really cool to see AJ Terrell and Kyle Pitts have that level of competition amongst each other, mainly because these are two guys that are going to be and are the face of the Falcons franchise, and
For sure.
two players who this coaching staff and the organization at large are going to build off of in the years to come. And so seeing them have that healthy competition, that camaraderie is really fun to see. It's also really fun just to hear these guys talking crap to each other. It's one of my
Why do they
favorite
pick
things.
on? Is it because he's the younger guy, or is he just?
No, because he's just so good. And they're just like, we need to stop this guy from doing whatever it is that Kyle Pitts does.
Now you got me excited about Kyle Pitts. I still don't know if I'm going to spend the early draft capital on him,
Understandable.
but the work ethic from what you're seeing, Drake London, the work ethic is there. You're seeing this guy grind out there, right? Him and
Oh
Pitts.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting because Drake London's coming off of a significant ankle injury, and something that we talked about with him during the first week of rookie mini camp was he was just so excited just to be out on the grass again. That was something he brought up. He was like, it's just so nice to be running around playing again. And I think when you talk to somebody who's just that excited just to be out there, like everything else is going to come along. And I think the coaching staff likes where he is in terms of understanding the scheme, understanding how he works with Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, all the other offensive weapons. I think all of that goes hand in hand.
Well, Tori, I appreciate. How do we find you? And do you have anything to promote? Like, do you have a show? Do you do your own podcast? Anything else that you're promoting?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Tori_McElhaney. And that's basically where I post all of our articles and videos and et cetera, et cetera. But we do a Falcons Final Whistle podcast, and I honestly just recorded one before popping on with you guys. So those are really the only things that I would say check out. And we have a lot of good content coming up in the month of July and August as we really get into training camp, and it's going to be fun.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. What's the name of the podcast again?
Falcons Final Whistle.
Are you the host?
So I do it with my managing editor.
Oh, nice. So you work directly for the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Tori, we appreciate you. We'll get this out and hopefully get this message, and hopefully more people draft some Pitts and Drake there.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.